Nearly 500 supporters had already unlocked early access to tonight's transmission. They were Starbound members, dedicated listeners who ensured new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Frayne and Rimiki could keep airing. But tonight wasn't just for them. Tonight, the broadcast would stretch beyond the boundaries of entertainment, reaching into something much bigger. In Studio Theta V of Threaduple's central transmission tower, Quillix Vaughn adjusted his resonance amplifier and stretched all 6 limbs. The crystalline plates of his exoskeleton caught the amber hue of the mood lamps, refracting warm light across the studio's curved interior. Everything about the space had been designed for one purpose: perfect sound, and in that moment no Voxilian voice was more trusted to carry it. The red transmission light blinked on. Quillix leaned toward the microphone, his vocal ridges perfectly aligned for clarity and charisma. "Good evening, fine citizens of Threaduple and all corners of glorious Voxilia. This is Quillix Vaughn, bringing you another night of whispers from the void, where the mysteries of the cosmos become your evening entertainment." His voice shimmered across frequencies, a melodious layering of chimes and subharmonic vibrations engineered by evolution and refined by years of experience. The studio's acoustic panels resonated in sympathy, capturing the nuances that had earned Quillix the title of the most charismatic voice on the airwaves. Tonight he lived up to it. "Before we begin tonight's thrilling tale," he continued smoothly, "a word from our sponsors." He flipped a toggle with one secondary limb, allowing the pre-recorded advertisement to flow across the channel. A cheerful, artificial voice chirped in. "Tired of dull, crystalline plating? Try Shimmer Gleam Exoskeleton Polish. One application keeps your plates glistening for 3 full rotations. A brilliant exterior reflects a brilliant mind." Across the control booth, Narax Fen, Quillix's longtime producer, offered an approving blink sequence, the Voxilian equivalent of a thumbs up. Her midnight blue exoskeleton glinted as she adjusted soundboard settings with calm precision. Quillix took the brief break to organize his script pages. His secondary limbs shuffled them neatly, while his primary set reached for a glass of softly glowing luminal tonic. He took a sip, letting the effervescence dance along his sensory receptors. From across the room, the studio's engineering technician, Frill Dosser, muttered under his breath as he recalibrated a stubborn piece of monitoring equipment. The man's movements were jerky, agitated. He'd been wrestling with that dial since yesterday's calibration report came back anomalous. The advertisement faded out. Quillix cleared his speaking apparatus and leaned forward again. "And now, tonight's weather report," he said, his tone taking on the casual warmth that had made him a household voice. "Brought to you by Vaporous Moisture Supplements, keeping your respiratory membranes optimally hydrated since the Third Enlightenment." Narax's assistant had just dropped the weather update onto his desk. Quillix scanned it as he read. "Atmospheric conditions remain stable across the capital region," he intoned. "Standard humidity levels expected to persist through the night cycle. Crystallization risk minimal. Evening activities can proceed without protective coatings." Then he paused. Something had caught his eye. An observatory note. "Our scientists report an unexpected nebula phenomenon in the upper atmosphere." Nothing to be concerned about. Merely an interesting scientific curiosity. Those with astronomical viewing equipment might want to direct their gaze skyward for a rare treat. He looked up, his antennae angling in silent question toward Narax. She shrugged with her upper limbs in a "just read what's there" gesture. Quillix turned back to the microphone. And now, dear listeners, for tonight's main feature. The studio door burst open. A messenger carrier skidded to a halt inside the room, holding out a folded communication slip with visibly trembling appendages. He was young, still bearing the pale yellow exoskeleton sheen of recent maturation. Narax took the note, frowned, and hurried to the booth. She slid the paper across to Quillix, her mouth parts drawn tight in confusion. Quillix scanned it quickly, antennae twitching. "Well, listeners," he said, adapting on instinct, "it appears our special episode might be more timely than we anticipated. We've just received reports of unusual activity at Central Crystalline Park." He read more. Eyewitnesses describe unusual metallic constructs descending from the sky, precisely in the area where the nebula phenomenon was observed. He looked up, locking eyes with Narax. "Is this part of the program?" he asked her quietly, off mic. "Some live-action performance tie-in?" Narax didn't respond. She just shook her head, slowly. Quillix adjusted his microphone. "We'll continue with our planned broadcast while we gather more information on this curious development," he said calmly. "Tonight's tale concerns theoretical first contact with extraterrestrial life forms, a subject that has fascinated Voxilian minds since we first looked up at the stars." Another messenger rushed in. Then another. Quillix's audio sanctuary was rapidly transforming into a nerve center of frantic activity. But he remained composed, his voice steady. "As I was saying," he continued, "the possibility of intelligent life beyond our world has been—" Narax stepped into the booth, directly to the microphone. Her interruption was unheard of. "These reports are verified by multiple sources," she said, "including regional security authorities." Quillix blinked, antennae stiffening. "You mean—" She nodded slowly, both eyes closing in a gesture of solemn affirmation. Quillix turned back to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice now heavier, slower, "we are receiving confirmed reports of unusual activity at multiple locations around Threadopole. Unidentified objects have descended from the atmosphere and appear to have landed." He took a breath deep in his chest cavity. "We are switching from our scheduled programming to bring you continuous updates on this developing situation." The show had changed. The night had changed. And for the people of Voxilia, the world was about to change with it. The studio had become unrecognizable. What was once an insulated chamber of calm precision now pulsed with urgency. Messenger carriers darted in and out, their footfalls echoing off the acoustic panels. Narax, normally the epitome of composure, flitted between the control panel and the central booth, collecting updates with increasing concern etched into the subtle shifting hue of her exoskeleton. Quillix Vaughn remained seated, his broadcast apparatus before him, still glowing. A lifetime of professional instinct anchored him. He kept speaking. Listeners, we are now receiving additional reports from across Threadupal. Similar sightings of descending metallic constructs, objects described as egg-shaped, roughly 30 lengths in diameter, have been confirmed at Meridian Square, the Upper Science Academy grounds, and even near the planetary governor's residence. Across the studio, Frill Dosser hovered beside the main engineering station, speaking urgently into his comms device. Then he turned toward Quillix, the movement sharp, his appendages twitching. "I've got a direct connection with Tress Lum," he said, holding the receiver. "She's the head park attendant at Apodite Central. She's witnessing the events firsthand." "Patch her through," Quillix instructed. There was a brief crackle of static before a breathless voice emerged from the speakers. "This is Tress Lum, reporting from Apodite Central Park. The object, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. Metallic, egg-shaped, maybe 30 lengths across. It descended using some kind of controlled thrust. It's landed directly in the reflection pool beneath the ancestral monument." Quillix leaned closer, adjusting levels. "Tress, this is Quillix Vaughn. Are you in a secure location?" "Yes," she replied. "I'm in the maintenance pavilion about 200 lengths away." "I can see it clearly." She hesitated. "Something's happening." The studio fell silent. "There's an opening. A section of the craft is folding outward. Beings are emerging." Quillix blinked. "Describe them, Tress." "They're bipedal. 2 limbs for walking, 2 more for manipulation, covered in some kind of reflective material, not crystalline. Smooth, soft-looking. No visible exoskeletal structures." "How many?" "5 so far. They're carrying devices. Could be instruments, could be weapons. They're activating something, projecting light patterns onto the ground." Another messenger arrived, handing Quillix a fresh report. He scanned it quickly. "Listeners," he said, "we're now receiving similar descriptions from every reported landing site. Multiple crafts, multiple beings. This is no isolated incident. It is coordinated." Frill's console lit up again. "Emergency channel from the Defense Authority. Commander Velk Thrang is requesting to speak directly on air." "Granted," Quillix said, the studio speakers filled with a deeper, more forceful voice. "This is Commander Thrang of the Voxilian Defense Authority. All citizens are instructed to remain in place. Do not approach the unidentified objects or the beings. I repeat, do not approach. Defense units have been deployed to all locations. This is not a drill." Quillix, still processing the enormity of the situation, addressed the commander directly. "Commander Thrang, this is Quillix Vaughn. Can you confirm, do we know their origin, their intent?" "Negative," came the reply. "They entered our atmosphere without authorization. These constructs are of no known Voxilian design. We are treating this as a potential security threat until proven otherwise." Narax motioned urgently from the side booth. "Tress is still on the line." "Go ahead, Tress," Quillix said. "The visitors," she reported, "are moving away from their craft. Slowly, upper limbs extended outward, appendages spread. A gesture? They're projecting more lights now. Interference. Our comm systems are glitching. The pavilion lights are flickering." Through the speakers, Commander Thrang's voice cut in again. All units, engage containment protocols. These actions constitute possible hostile technological interference. Commander, Quillix interrupted, is it not possible this is an attempt at communication? Not aggression. A pause. We cannot take that chance. Our responsibility is to protect Voxilian lives. Tress's voice spiked in pitch. Security units have arrived. A perimeter is being established. The visitors have stopped advancing. They appear to be watching. They're making sounds, modulated, melodic. Not like any Voxilian speech. It's softer. Another interruption, but this time the studio door shattered inward, sending crystalline fragments spraying across the floor. A Voxilian female stormed in, flanked by security officers. Quillix recognized her instantly. "Professor Gillix Moore?" he whispered. The academic's russet exoskeleton shimmered with etched disciplinary markings from the Xenobiological Theory Department. She clutched several data crystals and analytical devices, her limbs fluttering with barely contained urgency. "You must listen to me," she said, pushing past the guards. "You're making a terrible mistake." The officers moved to restrain her. "Wait," Quillix barked. "Let her speak." The head guard hesitated. 30 seconds. Gillix rushed to the mic, data clattering against the panel. "These landings. This is not an attack formation. It matches every model I developed for non-hostile first contact. Their placement, open spaces, culturally significant but non-military. It's the exact strategy we ourselves used during our age of planetary exploration." Quillix gestured her closer. "You're live. Explain to the public." She took a breath. "Citizens of Voxilia, please. Remain calm. What we're seeing aligns with peaceful contact protocols. The interference, it's likely a side effect. Our technologies may be overlapping. If we engage too quickly, we risk turning a misunderstanding into catastrophe." The commander's voice returned. "Professor Moore, your theories are noted, but we need proof." "I can provide it. Let me try to communicate before action escalates." Silence. Then, "You have 10 minutes. Quillix adjusted the mic. "Professor, how do you proceed?" She didn't answer, already too deep into her work. She connected strange instruments to the studio's audio systems. Frill Dosser hovered nervously behind her. "Careful with the harmonic modulator," he muttered. "I know what I'm doing," she shot back. "I built a prototype for this at the Academy, before they shut us down." Narax leaned in toward Quillix. "Can we trust her? Half the academic council thinks she's mad." "Sometimes," Quillix said, "reality proves the mad correct." Gillix twisted a final dial. "These beings are responding to our transmissions. I'll start with a simple sequence, prime numbers." She sent out a burst of tonal pulses. A delicate vibration passed through the studio. "Tress?" Quillix asked. "They've stopped moving," she said. "One's using a device, emitting tones, matching the pattern. It's the next numbers in sequence." "It's working," Gillix whispered. "They understand," Quillix conferred quickly with Narax. "Any hostile activity reported?" "None," she replied. "All units say the same, no aggression. They're focused entirely on communication." Gillix prepared another signal. basic audio representations of visual math. She transmitted. A beat passed. "They're responding again," Tress confirmed. "This time, it's visual. Projections on the ground, star patterns, charts." Gilix's markings glowed. "They're showing us where they came from." The commander's voice returned, quieter now. "All defense teams report no threat display. Standing orders updated. Weapons remain on standby." Quillix leaned into the mic. "Citizens of Voxilia, this is no longer speculation. First contact is happening, right now, and it appears peaceful." Gilix worked furiously. "They're shifting frequencies," she said, "matching ours. They're building resonance, adapting to our physiology." A low hum filled the studio, pleasant, harmonious. It made the exoskeletons of everyone present vibrate gently, calmly. "They're generating a shared resonance," she said in awe. "They're showing us they mean no harm." Frill blinked at his console. "The interference is gone," he said. "They've modified their output to match our systems." Then a final message arrived, sealed with the governor's insignia. Narax handed it to Quillix. He read it slowly. "They've sent more information, complex data. It appears they've detected a stellar anomaly, one that will impact our system within the next decade," Gilix gasped. "The luminary cascade theory. They're confirming it. The threat is real." Quillix turned back to the mic. "Listeners, they didn't just come to say hello. They came to save us." The air inside the studio was charged, heavy with realization, yet tinged with something unfamiliar. Unity. For the first time since the metallic crafts had descended, the tension hadn't escalated. It had shifted. The visitors weren't just responding, they were listening, communicating, matching tonal pulses and mathematical sequences. They were here for a reason, and that reason was becoming clearer with each transmission. Professor Gilix Moore's appendages moved with practiced speed, not the desperate flurry of someone trying to prove herself, but the calm certainty of a mind finally vindicated. Her translation instruments, crude by interstellar standards, but brilliant in their adaptability, were locked into the visitor's signal matrix. Each incoming transmission was more refined. Symbols began to carry structure. Symbols became patterns. Patterns became language. "They're mapping our broadcasts," she said, her voice caught between exhilaration and fear. "They're cross-referencing our linguistic structures with their own. They're trying to talk." A soft pulse hummed through the studio again. Not a signal this time, but sensation. A calculated vibration, targeted at their specific exoskeletal frequencies. It didn't hurt, it soothed, a tactile reassurance. "They've refined the frequency," Frill Dosser reported from the engineering console. "No system disruption. They're adapting to us, calibrating for compatibility." "Or control," Commander Thrang's voice returned through the emergency channel, less hostile than before, but firm. "We can't ignore the possibility." "They've already proven they could disrupt our infrastructure if they wanted to," Gilix replied. "Instead, they're adjusting to avoid interference. That's deliberate. That's peaceful." Narax handed Quillix a new communication slip. The seal bore the planetary governor's insignia again. Quillix read it aloud, his voice even but taut. The visitors have transmitted a data package to our scientific authorities. Preliminary analysis suggests they've identified a stellar anomaly, one with catastrophic implications for our system within 9 years. A hush spread over the studio. Even the message carriers stopped moving. Gillix gasped audibly. "Number, no, it can't be." She turned away, rifling through her own stored data crystals, plugging several into her analyzer. "The luminary cascade theory," she said aloud. "I was tracking irregularities in the spectral emissions of our star, but they were faint, inconclusive. But their data, it aligns perfectly." She looked up, stricken. "Without intervention, our sun will destabilize, not in 1,000 cycles, in 9. The studio door slid open again, this time not with force, but with official precision. Advisor Rennick Pohl, head scientific counselor to the planetary governor, entered flanked by aides. His pale green exoskeleton bore ceremonial etchings denoting both political and scientific authority. "Professor Moore," he said without preamble, "your unauthorized broadcast may have prevented a planetary miscalculation." He turned to Quillix. "Your frequency is confirmed as the most responsive link. The visitors are reacting most strongly to your transmission patterns. The governor has directed that this studio remain the communication nexus." Quillix nodded. "Of course, we're at the service of Voxilia." Narax relayed another message from the field. "Trez reports the visitors are gesturing toward their craft and then outward. She believes they're inviting contact. Direct contact." Gillix turned to Advisor Pohl. "We must accept." Pohl held a small communicator to his audio receptor. After a moment, he nodded. "Permission granted. A small, authorized delegation will be allowed to approach. Professor Moore, your expertise makes you the logical lead." "I'll go as well," Quillix said immediately, standing. Narax blinked in alarm. "You're a broadcaster, not a diplomat." "Exactly," Quillix replied. "They've already demonstrated affinity for our broadcast frequencies. My presence might help facilitate further communication." Paul considered. "Very well. Broadcaster Vaughn and Professor Moore will comprise the initial contact team. You'll be accompanied by security and medical personnel. Maintain continuous transmission." "We'll broadcast everything," Quillix confirmed, collecting his portable transmitter. The transport hum resonated beneath their feet as it carried them through the city's silent streets. Thread-U-Pole, usually pulsing with geometric lighting and rhythmic traffic, now stood still. The people were watching, listening. Crowds lined intersections, clustered around portable receivers. Parents lifted children to see the official convoy pass. Some waved, others simply stared. At Apodite Central Park, a perimeter had been established. Security rings nested within each other, containing the gleaming visitor craft. Lights from surveillance drones cast shifting shadows over the reflection pool where the craft had landed. The object shimmered in alien hues, its surface rippling as though alive. "They've made no attempt to move beyond the perimeter," Commander Thrang reported as he met them. "They're waiting." Quillix stepped forward, adjusting his equipment. "We are now approaching the visitor craft. I can see 5 beings, taller than the average Voxilian by a factor of 1.5. Their outer coverings, confirmed earlier, appear to be protective suits. Logical, Gillix murmured. They'd have no way to know if our atmosphere is compatible. One of the beings stepped forward, upper limbs raised, appendages spread. Gillix's voice barely rose above a whisper. A universal sign of peace. They're showing us they're unarmed. The being removed its head covering. The face underneath was alien, yes, but not monstrous. Soft, rounded, with clusters of organs consistent with visual and auditory function. Its skin, rich brown and textured, bore no signs of crystalline structure. It made a sound, gentle, modulated. Gillix's device converted it. Greetings, people of Voxilia. We are representatives of humanity from the planet Earth. We come in peace and with urgent purpose, Quillix replied without hesitation. We return your greeting. I am Quillix Vaughn, and with me is Professor Gillix Moore. We represent the people of Voxilia. The translator crackled slightly as the human responded. I am Captain Elelanena Mercer, of the exploration vessel Prometheus. Your recent deep space transmissions brought your world to our attention. Upon arrival, our instruments detected a critical stellar instability. We came to warn you. Gillix stepped forward. We've confirmed your findings. But how did you detect what we couldn't? Captain Mercer gestured, and one of her team activated a device. A holographic star flared to life, surrounded by data strings. Our civilization suffered a similar fate. Centuries ago, our own sun destabilized. Millions died during evacuation. The survivors built a doctrine to never let another intelligent world face extinction unprepared. The image shifted. Quillix saw simulations, stellar collapse, planetary death, evacuations, despair. He looked away. You offer evacuation? He asked, voice tight. Evacuation or stabilization, Mercer said. We've developed stellar manipulation technologies, deployed 3 times, each successful. But the preparation is immense. Time is short. Commander Thrang stepped forward. If you have this technology, why help us? Mercer removed her outer mask fully. Her face was solemn, voice gentle. Because we nearly lost everything, and we swore never again. Our stellar guardianship protocol compels us to act, to help, without conquering. The civilizations we've saved, they now stand alongside us, sovereign and equal. Gillix studied the images, her voice thick with awe. This is real. We don't impose, said a second human, older, white filaments hanging from his scalp. I'm Dr. Yamamoto. My ancestors lived through our crisis. The cost of survival left a mark on our species. Our strength is built from that wound. Your gesture is unprecedented, Advisor Paul said. We thank you. We came to offer knowledge, Mercer said, not dominion. Quillix took a step closer to the microphone. Citizens of Voxilia, you've heard the words of another species, not with weapons in hand, but warnings in their hearts. They did not come to conquer. They came to care. He turned to Mercer. And now, Captain, how do we begin? She smiled, a gesture now recognizable, now familiar. Together. The soft amber light of morning spilled across the crystalline towers of Threadupole, catching on the smooth edges of stone, metal, and something new. Curves. Human curves. Organic architecture now flowed between Voxilian lines, old and new, bound together like interlocking lattice work. Where once symmetry ruled alone, now harmony reigned. At the summit of the old Theta V studio, the red transmission light blinked once more. Quillix Vaughn sat in the same chair he had once claimed as a young broadcaster, now worn smooth from decades of history. His exoskeleton, once vibrant and translucent, had dulled to a noble pale blue, the microfractures of age spidering gently across his plates. In Voxilian culture, these were not flaws, but maps. Each line a memory, a story. He wore them like a chronicle of everything that had come after. This was his final transmission. The studio around him was no longer merely a broadcaster's sanctum. It had been transformed into a historical monument, a living museum of that night. The night the sky opened and Voxilia listened. His original equipment was still housed behind a protective barrier, preserved exactly as it had been when the first signal went out. He had kept the microphone. It still worked. Across from him, Gilix Moore, now Ambassador Moore, sat with quiet grace. Her russet exoskeleton gleamed with the elegant markings of a diplomat, still carved atop the academic etchings that had once marked her a pariah. The world had caught up to her vision, and in doing so, had been saved by it. Quillix gave her a nod. "They say time gives perspective," he said, his voice steady. "But some moments never blur. Some nights remain as clear in the memory as the day they arrived. That night remains the dividing line between the world that was and the one we have now." He looked to his right, toward the broad viewing pane now embedded in the studio wall. Through it, the sky gleamed with activity. Human and Voxilian vessels moved in graceful synchrony above the planet, drifting around the great stellar stabilization array that orbited their sun. It had been operational for 75 cycles. Not once had it faltered. Below, the city pulsed, not in fear, but in celebration. Today was First Contact Day. "We have lived nearly 8 cycles since the day the humans came," Quillix continued. "I remember how their ships looked above the monument pool, how their voices sounded, raw and foreign, yet familiar in spirit. I remember what they gave us. Not just a warning, not just a technology, but something harder to define, something greater." He paused, letting the words find their weight. "They gave us perspective, urgency, a mirror in which to measure not our science, but our soul." Gilix activated a display beside her. It shimmered to life with a map of the stars and a single, now stabilized anomaly that had once threatened to consume them. She added a new layer. Planets now connected to Voxilia by shared contact. Some human, some not. Other species, once scattered across the dark, had come into contact through the very protocol that once brought Earth to them. Voxilia had joined the cooperative, and then, in time, helped others join. From the observation deck above, a chorus of children sang in 2 languages, Voxilian tonal resonance and human voice, interwoven in harmony. Their tones spilled through the broadcast like memory carried on a current. "Younger listeners may not know," Quillix said, smiling faintly, "that Whispers from the Void began as a fiction program. Speculation, mystery, cosmic storytelling. We told tales of first contact for entertainment. We never expected to live one. His antennae dipped slightly, eyes closing with reverence. But the void whispered back, and it did not come in conquest. It came with outstretched hands, and then we reached back. Narax's granddaughter, a young technician with the same steady eyes and sharper nerves, gave him the final cue. The signal light was solid. The entire cooperative was listening. 3 systems, 17 species, all tuned to one voice. His voice. Gilix turned toward him one last time. "Ready?" she asked. He nodded. "To the people of Voxilia," he began, "and to all those now listening across the stars, we were once alone. We believed our world the center of meaning, and the void beyond it, silent." He reached to activate the playback of the original broadcast, but paused his hand above the control. Then came the night we were proven wrong, and it became the beginning of everything right. He pressed the button. The old voice came through, his younger self, still confident and smooth. But now it sounded different. Not because it had changed, but because everything else had. What had once been performance was now history. What had once been entertainment had become testimony. Outside, the ceremonial formation of joint Voxilian human craft spelled a familiar pattern in the sky. 3 tonal pulses, then 2. Prime numbers, the signal that had started it all. In the silence between transmissions, Quillix looked out at the light of the stabilized sun. He let the silence linger just long enough. "End transmission," he whispered, and the stars listened.